Hey everyone, before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future episodes. Now remember our recent YouTube video where we explore the Social Security Fairness Act? We really got into the nitty-gritty of those complicated provisions. The Windfall Elimination Provision, or WEP, and a government pension offset, or GPO, and how they were affecting public servants.
Right.
We even talked about that case of the police officer's widow who ended up with absolutely no spousal benefits because of the GPO.
Yes, it was a stark example of how these rules could lead to some really unfair outcomes for people who dedicated their careers to public service.
It definitely seemed like something needed to change. And
Yeah.
guess what? It did. As of January 5th, 2025, the Social Security Fairness Act officially became law. That means the WEP and GPO are officially gone.
Big news for a lot of folks, right?
It is. It's not often we see legislation like this move so swiftly and with such strong bipartisan support.
Yeah.
Both the House and the Senate passed it with overwhelming majorities. So for those who might not have seen that first video, can you give us a quick rundown of what these provisions were all about and why they were so controversial?
Absolutely. In essence, both the WEP and the GPO were designed to prevent people from receiving what was perceived as an unfair double dip from Social Security.
Oh.
They essentially reduced Social Security benefits for those folks who also had a pension from a job where they didn't pay Social Security taxes.
You're talking about teachers, firefighters,
Right.
police officers,
Right.
a lot of people in public service roles, right?
Exactly. And the argument against these provisions was that they were fundamentally unfair. These individuals paid into Social Security often for their entire careers
Right.
and then had their benefits reduced simply because they also earned a pension from a public service job. It felt like a penalty for choosing a career in public service.
I'm starting to see why this was such a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So the Act essentially repeals these provisions, meaning those folks will now get their full Social Security benefits.
Precisely. And this is where it gets interesting, because while there was broad support for repealing these provisions, there were also concerns about the financial implications. Remember, Social Security relies on a trust fund, which is essentially a large pool of money funded by payroll taxes. And that fund has been facing some pressure due to a variety of factors.
I like the fact that we have an aging population. People
Yeah.
are living longer, and more people are retiring earlier.
All of that plays a role. So even those who supported the goal of the bill recognized that repealing the WEP and GPO could potentially add to the strain on the Social Security Trust Fund.
So it's like a balancing act, trying to ensure fairness for public servants while also making sure the Social Security system remains sustainable for everyone in the long term.
Exactly. And this debate brought to light the complex reality of Social Security reform. There are no easy answers, and any decision will likely involve trade-offs.
Well, for anyone who wants to really dig into the history of these provisions and the arguments on both sides, I highly recommend checking out our original YouTube video. We really go in depth there.
Yes, that's a great resource for understanding the nuances of this issue.
But for now, I think it's important to acknowledge that this legislation marks a significant moment for public servants and for the ongoing conversation about the future of Social Security. It's definitely a situation worth keeping an eye on.
Absolutely. This is just one chapter in the larger story of Social Security. And as with any good story, there are sure to be more twists and turns ahead. It certainly does raise a lot of questions about what happens next.
Right, like, okay, this law has passed, these provisions are gone, but what does that actually mean for people's benefits? How does it all work?
Well, let's start with those who are already receiving Social Security benefits. For those individuals who were previously subject to the WEP or GPO reductions, they can expect to see an increase in their monthly payments. The exact amount will depend on their specific circumstances, of course. But it's safe to say that many will experience a noticeable difference in their financial situation.
That's got to be huge. For people who've been struggling to make ends meet on those reduced benefits.
Absolutely. And for those who are approaching retirement, the repeal means they can now plan for their golden years, knowing they'll receive their full Social Security benefits without those penalties. This can make a significant difference in their ability to retire comfortably.
Okay, so that's the immediate impact on individuals.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture? You mentioned earlier that there were concerns about how this might affect the Social Security system as a whole. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Of course. Remember, the Social Security system relies on a trust fund, which is essentially a giant pool of money that pays out benefits to retirees and other eligible individuals. That fund is funded primarily through payroll taxes.
So when people work and pay their taxes, a portion of that money goes into the trust fund to help support those who are currently receiving Social Security.
Precisely. And as we've discussed, that fund has been under increasing strain due to a number of factors, including the aging of the baby boomer generation. And the fact that people are living longer, this means there are more people drawing benefits for a longer period of time.
Got it. So how does the repeal of the WEP and GPO fit into all of this?
Well, even though those provisions were affecting a relatively small percentage of people, their repeal does have a financial impact. It means more money will be flowing out of the trust fund to pay those higher benefits.
I see. So some people were worried that this could accelerate the depletion of the trust fund and potentially lead to problems down the road.
That's right. And it's a legitimate concern. The financial health of the Social Security system is something we need to take very seriously.
But then again, you also mentioned that there was strong bipartisan support for this legislation. So I'm guessing there are different perspectives on how big of a deal this really is for the trust fund.
There are indeed. Some experts believe that the cost of repealing the WEP and GPO is manageable and won't have a significant impact on the long-term solvency of Social Security. They point out that the number of people affected is relatively small and that the overall cost is a drop in the bucket compared to the total expenditures of the program.
So their argument is essentially, yes, it will cost a bit more, but it's a small price to pay for fairness, and it won't break the bank.
Exactly. But as you might expect, not everyone shares that view. Other experts are more cautious, arguing that even a small increase in costs can add up over time, especially given the existing challenges facing Social Security.
Okay, so we've got two different schools of thought here.
Yeah.
It sounds like the jury's still out on whether this will have a major impact on the trust fund.
That's a fair assessment. We'll need to wait and see how things play out over the next few years to get a clearer picture.
And in the meantime, it seems like this whole debate has really brought the issue of Social Security reform to the forefront of public consciousness.
It has indeed. And I think that's a good thing. We need to be having these conversations. Social Security is a vital program that touches the lives of millions of Americans, and we need to be thinking about how we ensure its long-term sustainability.
So where do we go from here? What are the next steps?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to continue educating ourselves about the intricacies of the system, the challenges it faces, and the potential solutions that are being proposed.
Right. We can't just rely on sound bites and headlines. We need to dig deeper and understand the complexities involved.
And once we've done that, we need to make our voices heard, contact our elected officials, engage in public forums, advocate for the kind of Social Security system we want for ourselves and for future generations.
This isn't just a problem for politicians to solve. It's something that affects all of us. And we all have a role to play in shaping the future of Social Security.
Precisely. And I think the passage of the Social Security Fairness Act, despite the debate surrounding it, shows that it is possible to find common ground and make progress on even the most challenging issues.
It's a reminder that we're all in this together, and that through dialogue and collaboration, we can find solutions that benefit everyone. Well, while we're on the topic of dialogue and collaboration, something caught my eye. While I was researching the Senate's activities related to this bill, they had a lot of discussions and debates, proposed various amendments. It seemed quite lively.
Oh, absolutely. The Senate's deliberations on this bill were quite a spectacle. They really went through it with a fine-tooth comb, trying to ensure they were addressing all the potential implications.
Yes, and one particular amendment really stood out to me. It was Senator Paul's amendment, specifically SMDT 23352.
Ah, yes, Senator Paul's proposal to provide for automatic continuing resolutions. That certainly sparked some interesting debate.
It did, and on the surface, it seemed a bit out of left field. Like, what do automatic continuing resolutions have to do with repealing WEP and GPO?
It's a great question, and I think to understand Senator Paul's motivation, we need to consider his broader political philosophy. He's long been a vocal advocate for fiscal restraint and responsible spending. He's often expressed concerns about the national debt and the potential consequences of unchecked government spending.
Okay, so he's generally concerned about government overspending. But how does that connect to this specific amendment?
Well, automatic continuing resolutions, in simple terms, are a way to keep the government funded, even when Congress can't agree on a budget. It's a mechanism to avoid those dramatic government shutdowns we've seen in the past.
Yeah, those nail-biting moments where everyone's wondering if essential services will be disrupted.
Exactly. Now, by introducing this amendment, in the context of the Social Security Fairness Act, I think Senator Paul was attempting to draw a connection between Social Security reform and the broader issue of fiscal responsibility.
So he was essentially saying, hey, if we're going to make changes to Social Security that could impact the program's finances, We need to be thinking about how we manage government spending overall.
That's my interpretation. He was using this amendment as a way to highlight the bigger picture, to remind everyone that Social Security isn't operating in a vacuum. It's part of a larger system, and any changes we make need to be considered within that context.
That's a really interesting perspective. And it makes me wonder if this is a sign of things to come. Might we see more efforts to tie Social Security reform to broader discussions about fiscal responsibility?
I think it's certainly possible. The debate over the Social Security Fairness Act has undoubtedly raised awareness about the program's financial challenges, and that's likely to fuel further discussions about how we address those challenges in a fiscally responsible way.
So stay tuned, folks.
Yeah.
This story is far from over. It seems like the passage of this act has just opened up a whole new chapter in the ongoing saga of Social Security.
It has indeed. And as we move forward, it's crucial that we all stay informed and engaged. The future of Social Security is something we all have a stake in, and it's up to us to ensure its viability for generations to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can't just sit back and wait for someone else to fix it. We need to be active participants in shaping the future of this vital program. It's fascinating how a seemingly unrelated amendment can shine a light on the broader context surrounding an issue.
It speaks to the interconnectedness of these policy areas. Social Security reform isn't just about numbers and formulas. It's about values and priorities. It's about how we as a society choose to care for our most vulnerable citizens, while also ensuring the long-term health of our economy.
You've touched on some really crucial points throughout our conversation. Before we wrap up, are there any key takeaways you'd like to leave our listeners with? What are the things you think are most important to remember as we move forward in this ongoing discussion about Social Security?
I think one of the most important takeaways is that Social Security is not a static program. It has to adapt and evolve to meet the changing needs of our society. What worked in the past may not work in the future, and we need to be open to exploring new ideas and approaches.
So flexibility and a willingness to adapt are key.
Absolutely. Another crucial point to remember is that Social Security reform is inherently complex. There are no easy answers, and any solution will likely involve trade-offs. We have to be willing to weigh the costs and benefits of different proposals carefully, considering the impact on various groups and the long-term sustainability of the program.
It's not about finding the perfect solution, but rather the best possible solution, given the circumstances and the diverse needs of our population.
Exactly. And that's why it's so vital that we have these conversations. We need to engage in thoughtful and informed debate, listen to different perspectives, and work together to find common ground. It's easy to get caught up in partisan bickering or to feel overwhelmed by the complexity of the issue. But we can't afford to disengage. The future of Social Security is something that affects all of us, and we all have a responsibility to be part of the solution.
Well said. It's a reminder that even in the face of complex challenges, we can find ways to come together and work towards a common goal.
What's particularly interesting about the passage of the Social Security Fairness Act is that it demonstrates that progress is possible. Despite the concerns and debates, there is a clear bipartisan recognition that something needed to be done to address this perceived inequity, and ultimately, they found a way to get it done.
It gives me hope that we can find that same spirit of collaboration and problem solving as we tackle the larger issue of Social Security reform.
I share that hope. The Social Security Fairness Act might be just one piece of the puzzle, but it's a significant step in the right direction. It shows that we can make progress even on difficult issues when we prioritize fairness, thoughtful deliberation, and a willingness to find common ground.
Couldn't agree more. Well, I think this has been an incredibly insightful conversation about a really important topic. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us.
It was my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity to engage in this important conversation.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this journey. We encourage you to continue learning, keep questioning, and stay engaged in this crucial conversation about the future of Social Security. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more insightful discussions on a wide range of topics. Until next time.